threatened to increase medical premium fees guidelines to be reviewed as showdown looms in the health industry after insurance companies threatened to increase their premiums if medical fees and charges are not reduced. During a public consultation session organized by the Consumer Federation of Kenya, companies which offer medical insurance said if the fees charged by the doctors were not revised, they would increase the premium. Here's the thing. The government is talking about affordable universal health care for all, but sector players are saying things are not good at all since the costs are escalating. Question, where do we go from here? Gentlemen, I'm joined by James Wanjohi, the General Manager of Resolution Insurance. Thank you very much. Then Dr. Timothy Olwen, a health practitioner and also Secretary General for Kenya Association of Private Hospitals. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, you're both key players in the health sector. Anyone can go first. What is the status of the country's health sector right now? Dr. Olwen, you can begin with you.
In terms of the status of the health sector at the moment, I think we are optimistic in terms of the changes that we are going through in terms of the push towards universal health coverage. However, it comes with challenges, and one of the challenges we're seeing now is this push towards regulation of doctors' fees. I think what we need to adopt here is a more systems thinking approach in terms of looking at the overall issues that we're handling as opposed to focusing on narrow objectives like the doctor's fees issue typifies. So I'd say we look for example, healthcare costs. Initially, we were focused on increasing access, and I think that has been increased. But the moment access increases, it puts pressure on the healthcare system because the resources are limited. And that's why you see the next stage is to try and push and bring down costs with focus on doctors' fees. But I think a more broad thinking, more broad approach is required.
Okay, more broader push is required. Wanjohi, if you can mention probably just about the insurance premiums, how are you going to make it probably affordable for everybody to be part of it?
I think we start with increasing the number of people who come to buy insurance. Insurance operates on the law of large numbers. Now, the moment these prices go up, it means it is unaffordable to the many. And for that reason, we are only charging a few. Now, riding on what he has said, for us as insurers, we are only saying there needs to be more involvement with other stakeholders. For instance, if I charge a client premium today, it is supposed to last for 12 months. Now, if there are other things that change in between, for instance, such fees going up, then this cost has to be borne by somebody. And most likely, it will have to be pushed to the end consumer. And this is a universal law. If fuel goes up, those many other things also go up.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Olwen, why is healthcare so expensive? We've seen so many people travel abroad for treatment. Yes, why is it so expensive? And even insurance penetration in the country is still very low.
I think the cost of healthcare in this country is going up. I don't say that it is something that is unique to Kenya. With globalization and especially with medical technology and new interventions coming in, that puts pressure on price. But you must remember also the human resource component in terms of healthcare provider compensation. I'm talking about individual healthcare providers, be they nurses, be they doctors, be they other health-allied professions, has gone up, and especially you've seen with the push towards unionization. All those things bring up healthcare costs of inputs. So cost of inputs like medicines, other medical technologies, any investigations that are done, all those things increase healthcare costs. But that is not necessarily the same as saying that is the reason why people are traveling out of the country to access healthcare. That we have got to address as healthcare providers. We have to increase the confidence within our healthcare system. And the current turmoil we are having does not help our cause. And what we have got now is a stalemate where you've got, if you ask me, I foresee a lot of difficulty in terms of a standoff between doctors and people who are trying to regulate their fees. You saw the stand that Kenya Medical Association took in terms of not even participating in this stakeholder meeting, and yet we are saying on Friday we're releasing new guidelines. How are they going to enforce them? They have not got buy-in from the stakeholders. So I see a serious challenge, but we need to take a step back, take a deep breath, look at all the issue in total, and go back to the drawing board.
And let's talk about the new guidelines.
Yes.
Do you think the new guidelines do you want it to be reviewed, or do you want the guidelines to remain like that? Will it help in terms of insurance penetration? Because insurance firms are claiming that if the guidelines are not reviewed, that means the premiums will continue being high, and then patients, that is, customers, will not be able to subscribe to the insurance. So what do you think? What's your take about that?
With all due respect to insurance companies, I think they're being a bit disingenuous about this. These guidelines have been enforced since 2016, all right? The guidelines we're talking about. So there's no reason for us to say at this point in time that premiums are going to go up if those guidelines are not revised. And the other thing that we must admit in terms of the insurance sector is that the aspect of supplemental insurance, with NHIF becoming a very major player in terms of providing for healthcare, they have been paying part of the cost that insurance companies originally would have footed on their own. So as far as I'm concerned, personally, from where I sit, I don't necessarily see the reason why premiums should go up at this point if 2016 guidelines are kept in force.
Okay.
But of course, I'm sure he's going to have a view on that.
Yes, he'll definitely have a chance to respond to that. Currently, we are joined by our reporter, Gloria Mulimu, who is on standby and is going to give us the current status of this particular discussion on health. She's our senior reporter and she's been following up on this for quite some time. Gloria, can you hear me? If you can give us the current status, and Dr. Lueng is in studio, you'll be able to shoot some questions to him to answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Quite an interesting conversation you're having there. Well, when it comes to the uptake of health insurance in the country, the uptake is really low. We're talking about 3%, only 3% of the population said to be having a health insurance cover. And one would ask, why are we seeing this trend? So talking to health insurance experts, they say that this low uptake is due to the premiums that people contribute monthly. Now, the question again that would arise from these premiums is we're seeing a section of in the health sector. Actually, there were proposals that the 2016 guidelines, the professional fees guidelines, should be reviewed downwards. But a section of the health professionals are against this. And now, being that insurance covers actually use these guidelines to determine the premiums, the question that would abound is, where does this all leave patients in search of these services in private facilities? And my question would go to Dr. Timothy Olwen. Like, what's the way forward? What's the long-term outlook in terms of just ensuring that patients in the country get access to quality and affordable health care?
Thank you, Gloria. I think in terms of trying to achieve universal health coverage, the focus needs to be on avoiding out-of-pocket expenditure from patients. That is what we refer to in terms of this UUHC push, in terms of the constraints that you have, financial constraints that are put upon patients. So let us focus on getting everybody having service, not paying for healthcare at the point of service. That can only be achieved through pooling mechanisms. NHIF as a social insurer is one of the mechanisms. Through private insurance, that's another option. Tax-based systems where people access healthcare through public health facilities is another. So what we need to focus on is looking for mechanisms where all these three can be strengthened. Private insurance being one of them, like we have mentioned. Now, what I don't like about the focus on the issue of doctors' fees alone is because it means we are losing the plot in terms of what we want to do in terms of universal health coverage. We should be looking for ways in which doctors' fees in terms of people paying out of pocket becomes immaterial. Let the doctors be paid by these third-party payers. But if we are focusing on doctors' fees and trying to regulate that, it means, again, we are implying that people are going to predominantly be accessing healthcare through out-of-pocket expenditure. So what we need to do is look at the focus in terms of the total cost of healthcare, bring it down, yes, but look for ways of strengthening these pooling mechanisms. The other thing that I have to mention here is doctors are too important. Right? Too important in the grand scheme of things for us to be antagonizing doctors. Because doctors are the gatekeepers in terms of healthcare. Most of the other places where we're saying we've got costs are controlled by doctors. They're the ones who prescribe. They're the ones who ask for various interventions and tests. In addition to that, doctors play a major leadership role. And one of the things we need in our healthcare system now is to strengthen leadership and governance. That cannot be done without the doctors. So as far as I'm concerned, what I've said here is we must involve doctors in all these decisions. Ramming any decision down their throats is not going to work.
Wanjohi, probably if you can pick it from there, what's your take on this?
We have not refused for the review of their rates. But what we are saying is something reasonable. Over the years, every year the medical service providers increase their tariffs by a certain margin. say 5, 10, to whatever number. But now what we are saying is with this, when we talk about upwards of 50 to 70, definitely that cost has to be borne by someone. And what we are saying is we can only end up pushing it to the customer. So we are not opposed to it, but let other stakeholders be involved and let us reach an agreement.
Okay. Gloria, a reporter, has been able to cover so many stories and case studies whereby so many Kenyans are grappling with so many diseases, and the cost of medication has been pretty high. Gloria, if you can hear me, probably if you can just touch on that, Gloria.
Well, Sarah did just like you've said it. In the 2016 professional fees guidelines, like a mother walking in for a C-section would part with not less than between 96,000 and 180,000. So the question really is, how many people can afford this amount of money, given that health insurance companies use these guidelines, they base their premiums using these guidelines. So my question to Dr. Olweny is really, can something be done at least to reduce these rates to a considerable amount that even a common wananchi can afford, even if they go for these services in a private facility? And also, they didn't show up for a meeting to discuss these issues, and probably just give us a reason why the health practitioners are against these rates being revised downwards. Olweny.
I'd say, as to why the doctors are against the rate being revised downwards, what all doctors want is to be able to participate, and there has to be procedural justice. In other words, it cannot be participation for the mere sake of it for a predetermined outcome. And that's, I think, is the general perception that we have at the moment. It needs to be a truly consultative process. But you must remember that, again, in the private sector, I'm a firm believer in a free market economy. Any attempts at price controls can only have short-term benefits. But in the long run, at the end of the day, market forces are still going to prevail. So what happens is, if you try and regulate prices, interfere in terms of the market and upset the equilibrium, what will happen is you're going to have the forces of supply and demand are going to determine whether doctors decide to withhold their service, because at the end of the day, they have to see their work as being worth it. At the end of the day, if they find it's not worth it, what happens? Some of the younger doctors I know would opt to migrate out of the country, all right? Other doctors would say, it's not worth my time, I'd rather do something else. How does that impact on the push for UHC? It doesn't help our cause. And that's why I'm saying, let us be rational about this. Let us be sober about this.
Okay. The word is being rational about it to ensure that everybody gets affordable health care. Now to Wanjohi. Probably if you can tell me, what can you do as insurance companies to ensure that we have more people on board subscribing for premiums?
One, this is an approach that is being handled from a regulatory point of view. And I know the Insurance Regulatory Authority spearheads this by making sure that we have executive certificate of proficiency in different towns, so that at least we have more agents being recruited, and for that reason they can be able to reach out to the many masses. But then even as we say that, if we are talking about cost being one of the deterrent to many people being able to afford insurance, and now the cost is going up as opposed to down, then it's a counter effect. And for that reason, we are not able to meet as many numbers as we would want. We are talking about 3%. Really, if you compare that to the banking and the penetration that is there, you can see there is a total mismatch. And so that is what we are trying to grapple with, and we are saying these increases, coupled with many other things, are definitely going to push the price upwards, of which it will be not affordable. So
your major reason, you think that the increases will make, it will lead to low penetration? Well, it doesn't help?
Yes, it doesn't help. We are supposed to be looking at how to bring the premiums down so that it can be affordable to the larger numbers.
But why now?
Not necessarily why now. We are saying that providers have been increasing tariffs every year. We have been able to know how to manage, sometimes even without increasing premiums. But now when there is a sharp departure from that, and doctor's fee is an integral component of those rates being revised, definitely that cost has to be borne by someone.
Okay, and do you think there'll be probably something you can come up like a solution, win-win for both doctors and insurance companies? Dr. Olweny?
I think there has to be a round table type meeting, and it has to be about analyzing again what the drivers of cost are. And that's what we're not doing. Doctors' fees is just one of them. Let's look at all the drivers of cost and let us review those. And government also has to play its part in terms of regulation. For example, price of inputs. Like I said, pharmaceuticals, the majority of them are imported from out of the country. This is one of the reasons why people go to seek healthcare in India, for example. It is because the cost of a lot of those inputs are much lower. It's not necessarily because of the doctor's fees, isn't it? Much as the doctor's fees might still be lower in certain countries like India, yes, but forces of supply and demand are what are dictating this. And that's what I'm saying. That discussion has to be held, and it has to be held in an honest and transparent manner with all players involved.
Okay, Wanjohi, win-win for both?
I truly agree with Daktari. The only issue is this one looks like it was rushed. Yeah, there was no enough consultation. And that's why we are saying, indeed, we are agreeing to the increase, but within a certain frame. Yeah, you can't push it to 70%, 50, upwards of that. And we are saying, for us, if I have onboarded a client, and the premiums I took is for 12 months, for sure, such sharp increases definitely is not going to do well for our bottom line. And this is not about individual insurance company. It is about an industry as a whole.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Oluweny and Wanjohi. Very insightful discussion there. I hope that you have a roundtable and be able to